Welcome to my channel. You are listening to the Voice of Reason, and on this episode, we're going to be discussing the schism that took place in the year 431, which resulted in the apostolic churches of Southwest Asia separating themselves and breaking communion from the rest of the Christian church. So all I want to do in this video is just give a brief history of the schism and why it occurred. So let us begin. So this event that happened in the year 431 resulted in the Patriarch of Antioch, who was John of Antioch, separating himself and his apostolic church from the rest of Christendom. And that's actually an interesting turn of events because this dispute initially began not with John of Antioch, but between the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Patriarch of Alexandria. The Patriarch of Alexandria at this time is Saint Cyril of Alexandria, and the Patriarch of Constantinople was none other than Nestorius, the one who caused all of these issues within the church. And it all revolved around what is now known as the Nestorian heresy that actually splits Jesus Christ in half. True Orthodox Christology is that Jesus Christ is 100% God and 100% man. But what Nestorius was espousing is that Jesus Christ was only half God and half man, and this erroneous Christology came out of his idea that it was not appropriate to call Mary, the mother of God, the mother of God. Nestorius held that you could not call Mary the Theotokos, and that we should call Mary the Christotokos, or the Christ bearer, because his position, seemingly, was that Jesus Christ wasn't fully God, and that Mary only gave birth to Christ the man, but not Christ who is fully God. This is, of course, an erroneous view that was later condemned as heresy in the year 431 at the Council of Ephesus and resulted in the unfortunate split within the church. So again, this initially started as a conflict between Cyril of Alexandria and Nestorius of Constantinople. Cyril and Nestorius were corresponding with each other, writing each other letters, when the issue of calling Mary the Theotokos, or the Mother of God, came up. And Nestorius was rejecting that title for Mary, explaining that Mary gave birth to the human Jesus Christ and not the divine Jesus Christ, therefore splitting Jesus in half, which is the erroneous Christological view that contradicted what had already been said at the previous ecumenical councils of Nicaea in 325 and Constantinople in 381. But to this day, there is a huge controversy that remains about Nestorius, and that controversy is whether Nestorius himself was really a Nestorian or not. You see, it appears that Nestorius was actually talking out of both sides of his mouth. While Nestorius was corresponding by letter with Cyril of Alexandria, he was also corresponding by letter with John, the Patriarch of Antioch. And Nestorius, it appears, was saying two different things to these two different patriarchs. When he would correspond with Cyril of Alexandria, he was espousing what is known as Nestorianism. But when he was corresponding with John of Antioch, Nestorius was actually espousing the true Orthodox Christology, which is that Jesus is fully God and fully man. So Cyril had reason to believe that Nestorius was espousing heresy, but John of Antioch did not have reason to believe this because in his correspondence with Nestorius, Nestorius was presenting true Orthodox Christology. So again, it seems like Nestorius was speaking out of both sides of his mouth. So Cyril thought that it was serious enough that he would actually appeal to the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, Pope Celestine I, and ask the Pope to excommunicate Nestorius. That's right. The Patriarch of Alexandria was appealing to the Patriarch of Rome to excommunicate the Patriarch of Constantinople, and that eventually led to the Patriarch of Antioch breaking communion with all of them. Kind of a complicated story, but this is how it happened. Cyril appealed to the Pope to get Nestorius excommunicated. So the emperor, the Roman emperor, convened the Third Ecumenical Council of the Church, which is the Council of Ephesus, that year in 431. Now, John of Antioch did not see a reason to hold an ecumenical council that all of the bishops and patriarchs would have to travel to, because he did not see a reason to hold Nestorius on trial at the council because, in his correspondence, Nestorius seemed to be perfectly orthodox. So John of Antioch was confused and couldn't understand why Nestorius was going to be put on trial at the Council of Ephesus. Pope Celestine I wasn't actually able to make it to Ephesus from Italy, so he had Cyril of Alexandria preside over the Council of Ephesus. And it seemed like Cyril was very eager to get the show on the road, so to speak, and he actually started the council before John of Antioch had made it to Ephesus. The council had already been underway for about 5 days before the Patriarch of Antioch even got there. So John of Antioch was already upset that he would have to travel from Antioch all the way to Ephesus for this council, which he didn't even think was necessary because he thought that Nestorius was perfectly orthodox. And then he got even more upset when he arrived at Ephesus and he found out that Cyril, the Patriarch of Alexandria, had already started the council 5 days prior. Cyril didn't even wait for John to get there, and that made him even more mad. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was that when John of Antioch had finally arrived at Ephesus, Cyril had already told them that the council had already found Nestorius guilty of heresy, and that Pope Celestine I had already said in one of his letters to Cyril that if the council found Nestorius to be guilty of heresy, that he was to be excommunicated. But you have to understand, when John arrived and he heard that Nestorius was being excommunicated, John of Antioch assumed that Cyril of Alexandria and Pope Celestine I of Rome were excommunicating Nestorius for having the correct, true, orthodox Christology. He didn't know that Nestorius was espousing a heretical view. So it was a complete and total misunderstanding. And John was so upset because he thought that the Patriarch of Rome and the Patriarch of Alexandria were actually calling the Orthodox view a heresy, that John of Antioch broke communion from Alexandria and from Rome over it. So in the year 431, at the Council of Ephesus, the Patriarch of Antioch, because of a very unfortunate misunderstanding, broke away from the rest of Christendom. And all of the churches of Southwest Asia were no longer part of the Universal Church, and they became known as the Church of the East. It all happened over a really unfortunate misunderstanding because the Christology of the Church of the East matches perfectly with the Christology of the rest of the Universal Church. So this schism should not have happened. It was very unfortunate, but thank God that it has been partially healed, because ever since that schism, half of the Church of Southwest Asia has come back into communion with the Bishop of Rome, and it is known as the Chaldean Catholic Church and the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church, respectively. So pray for a complete reunion between the Assyrian Church of the East, as it is now known, and the Church of Rome. And thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless.